Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nico Shandita. I'm going to talk about mobile productivity and also product management. For today specifically, I'm going to talk about hypothesis-based problem solving in product management. First of all, a disclaimer about this topic. The opinions expressed here are solely on my own and do not express the views or opinions of my employer. In this hypothesis-based problem solving, you are going to learn about multiple different things, especially how to efficiently and effectively solve problems for your customers in product management. Let me illustrate to you in terms of how problem solving and communication with our stakeholders may actually looks like. It actually looks like this, where you are actually assigned on a project and you gather multiple different stakeholders' inputs, on which you gather more analysis, and then you do more interviews, you do a lot of data crunching, you go in circle round and round until about 2 days before the final presentation, and then you actually freak out, you cancel all your vacations, and subsequently you work until really late at night to deliver the final presentation to your stakeholder. Now, hypothesis-based problem solving will actually address these kind of issues. Hypothesis-based problem solving is actually uniquely defined for problems which are non-standardized and vague. It actually helps in terms of determining how to solve the problem more effectively. Hypothesis-based problem solving is divided into multiple different steps. There are 6 steps in total. So start out with the situations, where it's a succinct description of the current situation and circumstances of the customers, whether it's internal customer or even external customer. And then subsequently there's engagement objective. So the engagement objective actually define what the real problem that we are looking to solve for the customers. And sometimes is that the real problem that we are going to solve for the customer is not necessarily the problem which are articulated by the customer itself. And then subsequently there are drivers. These are 3 or 5 MISI levers. MISI stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. I'm going to talk a little bit more at later videos in terms of what MISI actually is. And the drivers will translate into a number of different hypotheses that's linked to that. A hypothesis is a declarative statement of belief or tentative action-oriented answer to question which point which actually requires analysis. And then the next step is actually to perform analysis and the data set. So performing some analysis in terms of the underlying data that support the hypothesis. And finally, we've got the validated hypothesis, which prove or disprove the hypothesis itself, and then is the basis for solutions and recommendations. So hypothesis-based problem solving is actually an iterative process. So the steps that I mentioned previously in terms of defining the situation, generating the hypothesis, determining analysis and information needs, and developing work plan, gathering data, analyze data, and validating or reject. All of these things actually applied in an iterative manner. So it's not really like sequential. Subsequently, once we iterated and we get enough evidences, we can actually draw out in terms of the conclusion and developing the recommendation. So let's go to the first step of the hypothesis-based problem solving, of which is about dividing the problem statement. As mentioned previously, it's really important to actually define a clear problem statement. And sometimes that the problem statement that was mentioned by the customer, it's different from the real problem statement. So here is actually one of the example. So on the left hand side you can see in terms of the general problem. Due to a new regulation in taxation, our variable cost will grow this year much more than last year. While the real problem statement is actually what can we do to decrease the customer churn by 10% due to the new regulation in taxation by the end of 2022. So problems communicated by the client actually may actually different from the real problem itself. So here are a few more examples. So what the customer will be saying that our fixed costs will grow this year much more than last year. While the real problem is, what can we do to achieve profitability by 23% or more in 2015? Another example, I need to relocate the call center. While the real problem is, how can I reduce the call center cost by 15%? If you notice from some of the examples that is actually outlined over here, a good problem statement actually consists of a number of different things. First of all, you actually need to align with the SMART principle. And also it does not include any symptoms, methods, or solutions. So what does it mean by SMART principle? SMART stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and time-bound. Specific means problem, object, and owner are clearly defined without room for interpretation. Measurable means problem scale is quantified. Action-oriented means that the problem to be solved is clearly defined as action to be executed. And also relevant means that only comments and points directly relating to problem are mentioned. And finally, time-bound means that problem time frame is defined specifically. A good problem statement actually does not include the symptom, the methods, and the solution. Why is that? It's because by outlining this, you are actually limiting the next step, basically. If let's say that we mentioned in terms of the solution, there could be, multiple different other solutions to solve the problem. It's not just one solution. So it shouldn't be describing any solution, and we have to separate the problem statement with the solution itself. It also does not include any symptom as well, because there could be like multiple different symptom or root causes. So here are some of the examples of vague problem statement and how can we actually improve them. So for example, the company A is suffering from poor profitability despite a strong market niche. And a good problem statement will actually mention that how can the company A achieve EBITDA increase by 5 million within 2 years. Another example, should company B improve its deteriorating market problem? An example of good problem statement is that how can company B gain market leader position with 30% market share in the next 2 years? There's some other examples here. I won't go through everything, but I think you can review on your own by pausing this video. Alright, so once we have defined the problem statement, the next step will be in terms of structuring and identifying its driver itself. The objective of problem structuring is to disaggregate the primary question from problem statement into a cascade of problem drivers or subtopics that are one, small enough to yield analysis, and two, when addressed, it will actually together derive the answer of the initial question. So it's actually a divide and conquer approach to solve the problem itself. One of the challenges in terms of identifying the driver is that identifying an efficient structure that can be worked through within the minimum number of steps that will yield a sound and relevant answer. So you can see over here in terms of problem statement tree, or usually called as well like hypothesis tree. So it can be done by breaking down the problem and into multiple different drivers. So at the top you have the engagement objective, and then it's divided into multiple different drivers, and each associate driver will have its own sub-driver, and there will be hypotheses which are linked to each of the driver, analysis, and also data required to prove or disprove the hypothesis. Here are a deeper explanation in terms of the hypothesis tree itself. So there will be like a project objective, which is the problem or question you are trying to solve or answer. And then the driver is the underlying causes and contributor to the problem. And subsequently, the hypothesis is a supposition about the problem driver or statement that infer a cause and effect relationship for further investigation. Analysis are the types of analysis needed to prove or disprove the hypothesis, and the data needed are the data which actually required to perform the analysis itself. So mind mapping can provide an alternative starting point to derive the tree itself in a very fuzzy project environment. So in this example, the problem statement is that how can we improve knowledge management of the company? We can see that management consists of multiple different drivers from strategy, technology, policies, people, and content. And then we can even break down each of those drivers into multiple different points. For example, under strategy, there are ethics, vision, rules, and values. Under technology, there is transparency, access, systems, and IT, and so on and so on. You can list the hypothesis via brainstorming and bring them in a tree structure to get an overview of the logic. So on the example above, if I'm taking one of the driver in terms of how can we use technology to improve knowledge management, and then we can have like a few hypotheses which actually relates to that driver. For example, the first hypothesis over here is that a centralized data storage system can serve as a one-stop shop for users, improving accessibility to knowledge by X%. Hypothesis 2 as well is that with functionalities like wikis and blogs, we can form a virtual groups of expertise which will improve our proposal quality by X%. One other thing that to look for when deriving the hypothesis is this is actually the so what principle, which actually as simple as asking in terms of the hypothesis, so what? This is to actually test the relevancy of that hypothesis to the driver, and also making the hypothesis actionable and ensuring that it's a tree structure to get an overview of the logic and exclude like potential overlap. So the thing that I mentioned just now about the MISI principle, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, is actually to ensure that each of the tree itself is actually distinct and not overlapping. The reason is because if we have overlapping tree, then the subsequent analysis could be overlapping as well, meaning that you'll be doing two jobs at the same time. So as mentioned, once the problem drivers are MISI, which is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, then you can actually develop the related hypothesis through the method I mentioned just now. It's important to note that incorrect hypothesis tree are neither exclusive nor exhaustive. It's really important to actually find out in terms of the tree that they are actually a correct principle. So in the example over here about the Brazil market entry, we can see that we actually break down in terms of multiple different questions and drivers relating to the Brazil market entry. For example, is the market attractive? What is the market size? What is the market growth? Are the car prices high? What are the production input costs? What are the labor costs? What are the raw material costs? However, is that these are just questions, but it's not a hypothesis itself. For example, is the market attractive? So we can actually prove or disprove this hypothesis actually because of the fact that we do not know what is the threshold for an attractive market. Let's say that is $50 billion, is that attractive market size or not? So we do not know because we actually haven't defined the hypothesis in a correct manner. So we really need to ensure that each of the hypotheses is at the right format so that we can actually prove or disprove it correctly down the line. So driver diagrams can be formatted to create the basis of the overall work plan. So here's actually like a template of a table in terms of driver diagrams. And here's also an example once it's actually filled in. Alright, so I think I've gone through like the whole exercise in terms of hypothesis-based problem solving. I hope that you find this session useful. If you do get any value from this video, please consider to subscribe and click the bell button at the bottom of the YouTube video. And if you do, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for listening. Looking forward for the next one. Thank you. Bye for now.